What's going on, everybody? It's your boy RPG, and today we're doing a countdown of the 10 most overrated rappers of all time. Now, keep in mind, this list is based on my personal opinion. I'm not saying that these are unequivocal facts or that you have to agree with me. This is just how I feel based on what I consider to be my expert opinion. Now, before we get into it, what do I mean by overrated? What we're going to be focusing on today is not artists who are very popular that I don't personally enjoy or seek out, but instead artists that are widely considered to be wordsmiths and very skilled in the technical aspect of rapping. And also there's a couple of people who made the list who have rankings on publications like Billboard and others that I simply don't agree with. So while I don't listen to artists like, say, Lil Yachty or Playboi Carti, they're not going to appear on this list because they aren't considered to be lyricists. It's a commentary on perceived skill and not what some might deem unwarranted popularity, if you will. So now that we understand what to expect, let's get right into it, okay? At number 10, we have JayZ. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be surprised by that, and before I get into why he makes the list, let me be clear. Everyone on this list, with the exception of 2 or 3, have multiple records that I enjoy. There's a difference between being overrated and being bad. Now, I'll be the first to admit and acknowledge that JayZ has accomplished a tremendous amount in his career. Since his debut album, Reasonable Doubt, came out in 1996, he's gone on to drop 13 solo albums, all of which debuted at number 1, which is an outlandish feat. To date, he sold over 45 million records, with his highest selling project being Hard Knock Life Volume 2, which has sold 6.2 million copies. His verse on DJ Khaled's song I Got the Keys, his first verse on Renegade with Eminem are probably my favorite 2 things from him. And I actually like his first verse on Renegade more than Eminem's first verse on Renegade. Now, Eminem's second verse stole the show, but he's probably my favorite rapper of all time. So nothing but respect, JayZ. That's a great compliment. He's accomplished a lot, but I've seen on several media outlets who do rankings like this where he's been ranked the number 1 rapper of all time. Does he have longevity? Yes. Does he have accolades? Yes. Is he a technician as an MC? Absolutely. But if we're talking about skill, the pure apex level of rapping ability, just off the top of my head, people like Tech-9, Eminem, Lil Wayne, Joyner Lucas, Hopsin, Twista, Ludacris, even Drake on some of his time signature records like 4 PM in Calabasas, all have wowed me more than JayZ ever has from a technical ability standpoint. So, do I think he's bad? No. He's number 10 on here, so he barely made the list. But when we start talking about best rapper of all time, I can't really get on board with that. Now, moving on to number 9, we have Andre 3000. 3 Stacks is an OG in the game and one of the pioneers that turned the Atlanta rap scene into what it is today. He's released 6 albums with his Outkast running mate Big Boy, the most successful being the double album Speaker Box and The Love Below, which debuted at number 1 back in 2003. And I'm not gonna lie, I was in middle school when that album came out, and they had that entire year on Smash. Songs like Hey Ya and I Like the Way You Move being some of my favorites. Now, I think 3 Stacks is a great songwriter and a very versatile performer. I mean, Hey Ya is a fantastic song, and it's very different. Had he continued to make music, he might not have made my list, but his last studio release was his album Idlewild with Big Boy in 2006. So his discography isn't up there with the likes of a Drake, a Eminem, or even number 10 on our list, JayZ. And he's often put in the class as one of the best lyricists of all time. The Billboard list that came out not too long ago that I will continue to reference throughout this countdown had him ranked as the 12th best rapper of all time. And while he does have hit records, once again, I just can't rank him that high as a lyrical technician. I've never really been wowed by him as a lyricist. But salute to him as a musician. Now, moving on to number 8, we have Snoop Dogg. Now, out of everyone on this list, he is not considered to be this super lyricist. But again, when we start to look at rankings from mainstream media, they often have him in spots that are just way too high for me. Billboard on the top 50 rappers of all time just had him ranked at number 8. If you want to say he's one of the greatest rappers of all time, his legacy, things like that, that's fine. Since Doggy Style dropped in 1993, he's released 19 solo albums and 7 collaborative projects. Doggy Style and The Dogfather both debuting at number 1. He's had a great run and is without question the biggest fixture in pop culture of anyone on this list. He's making a living now just off of being himself. And I think that's great. He's become this sort of character of himself, you know? I just don't think that he's a top 10 rapper of all time. Now, moving on to number 7, we have J. Cole. J. Cole for me falls in line with a few others on this list that do this conscious, preachy rap that I'm not always the biggest fan of. Having a message and operating outside of the typical bravado and braggadocio that's become so commonplace in rap over the past 2 decades or so can be refreshing. But particularly with this newer generation of rap, critics act as if having a message somehow automatically makes you a great lyricist. And that's just not the end-all be-all in my opinion. There's another rapper higher up on my list that falls even more so under this category, but we'll get to that later. All 6 of his studio albums have reached number 1. My favorite verse from him is on Lil Wayne's Dedication 4 song, Green Ranger. I thought he did really well on that. He's a talented guy, but I just have a lot of trouble with mainstream media's top 10 to 15 rankings, which is where he's being listed now. I don't have much more to say outside of that. I think he's important to the type of music that he makes. It's just not for me. Now, moving on to number 6, we have Common. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super familiar with his catalog, but from what I remember hearing from him in the early to mid 2000s was never anything mind-blowing to me. He's another conscious rapper who is hailed as this great lyricist, and to be 1,000 with you, I cannot even name you one song of his from memory. I don't mean to be mean-spirited about it, but he's one of the 3 people on this list that has never made anything that I enjoy personally. Since Can I Borrow a Dollar in 1992, he's gone on to release 14 studio albums, and despite having a prolific output, he does not have the accolades of even a lot of the other people on this list. The record sales for all of his albums combined is only 2.8 million copies. So nowhere even close to a JayZ or a Snoop Dogg. And yeah, I've just never been that interested in his work at all. That's really all I have to say about it. Coming in at number 5, we have probably one of my more controversial picks on this list, Notorious BIG. Now, I want to say I like quite a few Biggie records. Songs like Juicy, Going Back to Cali, Hypnotize, Notorious Thugs, 10 Crack Commandments are, in my opinion, top 100 rap songs of all time. My only issue with Biggie is when people put him in GOAT conversation. I've seen him ranked #1 on several greatest rapper lists. If you want to say he's somewhere in the top 10, definitely top 15, that's fine. He's not a top 10 favorite listen of mine all time, but I can get on board with the lower end of top 10 and top 15. And I think part of what hurts his case for me is the fact that he was only able to release 2 studio albums, 1994's Ready to Die and 1997's Life After Death, before he was tragically gunned down on the evening of March 9th, 1997 in Los Angeles. Had he gone on to make more music, I don't think he would have made my list, but unfortunately he did not get the chance to do that. The mystique surrounding the back and forth and untimely demise of both him and Tupac has been documented, discussed, and romanticized ad nauseum. But in these discussions, we forget to look at how the music has aged and its impact on the culture. And to me, Biggie is not a top 10 lyricist of all time. I don't think he's had the impact on culture that his contemporary Tupac had. He certainly wasn't as prolific as Tupac or well-rounded as Tupac. He wasn't the pop culture fixture that Tupac was. And so for me, I think he gets attached to Tupac and his rating is bumped up because of that. Now, moving on to number 4, we have Nas. Now, I know what you're thinking. Damn, RPG, do you like any of pop culture's usual top 10 rapper candidates? Of course I do. You're not going to hear Eminem, Lil Wayne, or Tupac on this list. They're all widely regarded as top 10 rappers of all time, and I tend to agree with that. So once again, with Nas, we have mainstream media's holy trinity of longevity, being prolific, and having a message. All important and admirable things that have nothing to do with being technically elite with words. Is Nas a lyricist? Yes. Do I think he's a top 10 lyricist of all time? No. He was on fire in the 90s and early 2000s with songs like One Mic and Ether being some of his most memorable, in my opinion. With Nas, my issue is not only do I not think he's a top tier wordsmith, but he also doesn't even have the number of hits that some of his contemporaries on this list, like a JayZ or a Snoop Dogg, do. I don't think you can be in GOAT talks if arguably your best song and biggest song ever is a diss track. His 2001 song Ether, aimed at fellow New York artist and overrated rapper JayZ, is without question one of the biggest diss records of all time. But can you name me 10 Nas singles? Can you name me 5? While prolific, his catalog of 16 studio albums just isn't very memorable to me. Outside of Ether, One Mic, and New York State of Mind, I'm hard-pressed to name another song of his. I also think he suffers from the opposite plight of Biggie, where his longevity has almost hurt him in my eyes. Since his 2002 album God's Son, his commercial success and cultural relevance has been on a steady and steep decline. His 20 million albums sold is nothing to scoff at, but he doesn't have a platinum album since 1996's Nostradamus or a gold-selling record since 2008's self-entitled Nas. Had he stepped away in the late 2000s, he might not have made the list, but I think his longevity, quote-unquote, has only hurt him in this discussion as the quality of the music and its success has continued to dwindle for a decade and a half now. He's inspired people like Eminem, who is without question to me a top 3 rapper of all time. In my opinion, as a wordsmith, probably number 1, and many others, but he himself to me is just not a top 10 lyricist of all time. Moving right along to number 3, we have Lupe Fiasco. And I'm gonna be honest, much like Common, I cannot name you a Lupe song outside of Kick Push and Superstar, both of which came out over a decade ago. Lupe is not typically found on the top of the list like Billboard and Complex, but he operates in this sort of underground cult following. Someone comparable maybe would be like an Immortal Technique. I've had people tell me he's the best rapper alive and their favorite, and seen his name put in the circle of greats. And honestly, I'm not going to spend much time on this one because, once again, he has never done anything that's impressed me much like a Common. He also does not have the commercial success to back these claims. I've heard other songs of his that I can't recall the name of, and I just was left wildly underwhelmed. I don't think he's a great lyricist. I don't think he's a great songwriter. I've never heard anything where he's like singing in a particularly entertaining way. He just brings nothing to the table for me at all. Is he as popular as some of the people that he's ahead of on this list? No, but everyone that has made an appearance on here, with the exception of Common, who I put kind of in the same category, is better than him at rapping. Common just received a lower ranking because I've never heard him in like people's like GOAT talk, and I have with Lupe, and I think it's kind of ridiculous. Now, moving on to number 2, we have MF Doom. I've heard some of his music, and for me, he falls in the category of Lupe and Common. They're the 3 on this list that, as I stated earlier, have never done anything that has impressed me. I can't name you a single song of his, and he has no commercial success to really go over. With guys in this category, I'm not giving much context because I really don't have much to say outside of how overrated they are. He operates in this weird kind of nerd rap space, underground nerd rap, and it's just not for me. The music sounds really dated, the beats sound really dated and New York centric. And I've heard him in, again, people's kind of GOAT talks. So I can't really get on board with that. The reason someone like Lupe is slightly ahead of him and Common is ahead of him is because they had at least a semblance of commercial success and not just a legion of weird white kids who want to go against the grain and say somebody's all-time great when they're really not. No disrespect to the dead, rest in peace. Now, moving on to what will probably be my most controversial selection alongside Biggie, we have reached our number 1 spot, Kendrick Lamar, who, in my opinion, is the most overrated rapper of all time. One of the overlying themes of this list has been my belief that having a message in your music does not automatically catapult you to this Mount Rushmore of rap status. I will say Kendrick is probably the most talented rapper on this list. And you say, well, RPG, if he's the most talented on the list, why is he number 1? He's number 1 because the commentary surrounding his standing in hip-hop has reached the point of being hyperbolic. His debut album, Section 80, only came out in 2011, and as early as his 2015 release, To Pimp a Butterfly, I was already hearing his name in GOAT talks. Now, songs like Swimming Pools and Mad City are absolute fire in my opinion. Since his debut in 2011, he's only released 5 albums. Those albums have had commercial success, selling around 10 million total units as of the release of this video. And to be honest though, his most recent work has just gotten to be pretty strange. From his aesthetic to his songs, he seems to be venturing away from the genius side over to insanity. Some of his earlier songwriting is impressive, but I don't view him, once again, as a top 10 lyricist of all time. And to see someone put in the GOAT conversation as early as 5 years into the career is, quite frankly, embarrassing to these publications, in my opinion. He was recently ranked number 2 on Billboard's 50 Greatest Rappers of All Time, behind number 10 on our list, JayZ, who is ranked number 1. And I have to ask, what is he the best at besides pandering to the idea that black people are at an inherent disadvantage because of the color of their skin, even in modern times? Lyrically, he doesn't stack up with an Eminem. He doesn't have the hits of a Drake or even someone like a Travis Scott. He hasn't changed and moved the culture like a Tupac or Lil Wayne. He doesn't even have the longevity of some of the other people on this list, like a JayZ or like a Snoop Dogg. And I think what really set me down this path with him was hearing his name in GOAT Talks as early as 2015. And I'm sorry, but having a message that, let's be honest, not everyone agrees with either, but having a message does not make you a great rapper. He has shown technical skill at times, and perhaps I'm putting him a bit too high on this list, but for all the adoration that he's received, and as early as he received it, that to me is what has put him in this spot. And as I stated a few moments ago, the music has just gotten increasingly strange over time. So that is my list of the 10 most overrated rappers of all time. If you disagree with any of these selections, or you have any names that you think I missed, be sure to let me know in the comment section. This is my first video like this, so there is going to be a learning curve, but I appreciate everyone that tuned in, and if you could like and subscribe. If you are not already subscribed, then I would really appreciate that. Until next time, it's RPG. Peace.